The great city of the Silketh shone under its twin moons. Buildings were not made of steel or stone, but of a living, growing crystal that hummed with a soft, inner light. Pathways glowed, and the very air seemed to shimmer with gentle, chiming sounds. It was a place of peace and subtle beauty. Tonight it was also a place of immense political tension. A grand gala was being held to celebrate a new alliance between three great powers: the elegant Silketh, the hulking Grothan hegemony, and humanity. Kim Min-soo felt very small. He was a junior aide for the human diplomatic corps. His job was to stay near the back, to listen, to take notes, and most importantly, to not cause any trouble. He was good with languages, which was why he was here. He could understand the basic, chiming words of the Silketh and the low, rumbling growls of the Grothans. But understanding their cultures was a different matter entirely. The hall was a dizzying spectacle. Silketh nobles glided past, their opalescent skin catching the light, their robes flowing like liquid starlight. They communicated as much with slight shifts in the color of their cheeks or the subtle melody of their thoughts as they did with words. They were beautiful and terrifying. Then there were the Grothans. They were massive, their bodies seeming hewn from living rock. Their skin had the rough, textured look of granite, and their voices were like boulders grinding together. They valued strength above all else. Where the Silketh were subtle, the Grothans were blunt, and in the center of it all were the two. Royals. Princess Liana of the Silketh was the picture of serene grace. Her hair was like spun silver, and her eyes held the deep calm of a still lake. She moved through the crowd, offering polite, psionically charged greetings that made her subjects glow with happiness. But Min-soo, watching from a distance, could see the tightness around her eyes. She carried the weight of her entire people on her shoulders. This alliance was vital for their survival against a common enemy, but allying with the gruff Grothans was like trying to dance with a mountain. Prince Torin of the Grothans was that mountain. He stood a full head taller than any other being in the room, his broad shoulders looking capable of holding up the sky. He did not glide. He planted himself. His greetings were short, sharp nods. He saw the alliance in purely strategic terms, a combined fleet, a shared defense grid. The delicate dance of Silketh politics seemed like a waste of time to him. His gaze often found Liana, not with admiration but with a cool, analytical assessment. Min-soo's superior, a stern woman named Commander Lee, had given him one instruction: blend in, observe, do not, under any circumstances, engage. This was easier said than done. Min-soo's nerves were a live wire. The pressure of the event, the fear of making a mistake, was a knot in his stomach. He saw other guests sipping from elegant glasses filled with a swirling, vibrant blue liquid. A floating servitor, a small drone shaped like a crystalline bird, offered him one. Desperate for something to calm his nerves, he took it. The Harmony Elixir, as it was called, was sweet and cool. It tasted like blueberries and mint. He drank it too quickly. He didn't know that for a human, it was less like wine and more like a powerful neurochemical cocktail. A Silketh would sip one glass all night. Min-soo drained his and, feeling bolder, grabbed another. The change was gradual, then all at once. The sharp edges of his anxiety softened. The chiming music of the Silketh started to sound less alien and more musical. The intimidating Grothans began to look like interesting, rocky sculptures. The world took on a warm, fuzzy glow. This was a problem. From across the room, Commander Lee watched him with narrowed eyes. She saw the slight sway in his posture. She started moving toward him, a shark cutting through calm water. But she was too late, fueled by a drunken, misguided courage. Min-soo decided that the problem with the galaxy was a lack of simple human friendliness. He looked at Princess Liana and Prince Torin, who were standing near each other, engaged in a conversation that was so stiff and formal it could have been carved from ice. They look so serious, Min-soo slurred to himself. They just need to lighten up. And so, with the foolish bravery of the very drunk, Kim Min-soo walked directly into the center of the diplomatic event. He weaved his way between a startled Silketh composer and a hulking Grothan guard. Coming to a halt right between the two heirs, the conversation stopped. Liana looked at him, her head tilted in polite confusion. Torin looked down at him, his stony face unreadable. Minsu, beaming, held up his now empty glass. "A toast," he announced, his voice too loud for the subtle hall. A silence fell, so deep and sudden it felt like a physical force. Every Silketh and Grothan in the immediate vicinity turned to stare. Commander Lee froze 10 feet away, her face a mask of pure horror. Minsu, blissfully unaware, switched to a messy combination of basic Silketh and trade Grothan. He pointed his glass at Liana and Torin. "To the happy couple?" he boomed. "You too. You have a good feeling. A strong feeling. May your union be as strong as this. He gestured wildly with his glass, trying to remember the word. "This alliance thing." He beamed, proud of himself for being such a great diplomat. The reaction was not what he expected for Princess Liana. The world shifted. In her culture, words were not just sounds. They were carriers of intent, of psychic energy. A public declaration like this, from an outsider, was not a simple social gesture. It was considered a profound moment of clarity. A soul thread, a potential bond between two people, was invisible until a perceptive third party gave it voice. This human, this stranger, had stood before the entire court and, in a raw, unpolished burst of feeling, had declared he could see a powerful connection between her and the Gruthan prince. His drunken state only made it seem more authentic, less filtered by political cunning. It was a staggering, shocking, and deeply personal act. Her opalescent skin flushed a deep, surprised violet. She looked from Minsu's sincere, drunken face to Torin's imposing figure. For the first time, she didn't see just a rival prince. She saw the potential that the human had, in a strange way, revealed for Prince Torin. The meaning was different, but just as profound. In Gruthan culture, matters of courtship were contests. A public declaration from a third party was not an observation. It was the opening of a formal challenge. It was a herald announcing that a contest for a mate had begun. By stating that a union was possible, this human was throwing down a gauntlet. He was challenging Torin to prove his worth, to fight for the princess's favor. To ignore it would be the deepest cowardice. Torin's eyes, like chips of obsidian, locked onto Minsu. He did not see a foolish drunk. He saw a herald, a brave one, who had the audacity to speak a difficult truth in front of two powerful races. He felt a surge of competitive fire. The princess was a prize worth winning. He slammed his crystalline goblet, causing it to crack, and let out a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the floor. It was the Grothan sound of acceptance. The challenge was acknowledged. Commander Lee finally reached Minsu, grabbing his arm firmly. "What have you done?" she hissed in Korean. Minsu, confused by the intense silence and the purple blush on the princess's face, just smiled. "I made a toast," he whispered back, his words slurred. "I think it went well." He had no idea. He had just, with a single drunken sentence, convinced a psychic princess that he had seen her soulmate and challenged a rocky prince to a courtship battle. The interstellar love war had begun, and Kim Minsu was its unwitting and very drunk. Architect *, the morning was not kind to Kim Minsu. He woke up in his small room in the human embassy, and it felt like his brain was trying to escape his skull. A dull, throbbing pain pulsed behind his eyes, and his mouth felt dry and strange. The memories of the gala were a blurry, confusing mess. There was music, there were bright lights, and there was a very bad feeling about a drink that was the color of the sky. He remembered Commander Lee's face. Her expression was sharp and clear in his mind, a look of pure anger. He had messed up. He knew it. He had given a toast. He had spoken to the royal heirs. That was against the rules. He was sure he would be sent back to Earth on the next ship. He would lose his job. His career was over before it had even properly begun. He dragged himself out of bed and got ready. He expected a summons to Commander Lee's office any minute. He would have to pack his bags. The thought made his stomach feel even worse, but the summons that came was not from Commander Lee. It was a message on his datapad. The words glowed on the screen. It was an official invitation. He was to present himself at the private gardens of Princess Liana of the Silketh in 1 hour. Minsu stared at the message. This had to be a mistake. Or maybe it was part of his punishment. Maybe the princess wanted to tell him personally how much trouble he had caused. His heart sank. He put on his best uniform and walked to the gardens. His head still pounding, the gardens were nothing like on Earth. The flowers were made of delicate, glass-like material, and they chimed softly in the breeze. The air smelled sweet and clean. Princess Liana was waiting for him by a small, pond-like feature where the water flowed upwards in a shimmering ribbon. She was even more beautiful up close, and much more intimidating. Her silver hair seemed to catch all the light. She looked at him, and her expression was not angry. It was thoughtful, curious. "Kim Minsu," she said, her voice like a soft melody. "Thank you for coming." Minsu bowed, unsure of what to say. "Your Highness, I am very sorry for my behavior last night." Liana tilted her head. "Sorry? For what?" "For the toast," Minsu said, his face feeling hot. "I was not myself. I drank something I should not have. It was rude." The princess smiled a little. "Your people are very strange. You see a truth so clearly and then you apologize for it." Minsu was confused. "A truth?" "Your words last night," Liana said. "You stood before everyone and you named the connection. You saw the thread between Prince Torin and myself." Minsu just stared. He had no idea what she was talking about, a thread. He had just been trying to make a friendly, if very drunk, comment. "In my culture," Liana explained gently, "such a declaration is a great gift. It is a moment of clarity. You saw past our titles, past our politics. You saw a possibility that we were too cautious to see for ourselves. You were the mirror." Minsu's mind was racing. This was a huge misunderstanding. A terrible, wonderful, terrifying misunderstanding. She thought his drunken mistake was some kind of deep wisdom. I see," he said, which was a complete lie. "I wish to thank you," Liana said, "and to give you a token of my appreciation." She held out a small, smooth crystal. It was pale blue and warm to the touch. "Hold it. When your thoughts are loud, it will help them find a quieter song." Hesitantly, Minsu took the crystal. The moment his fingers touched it, the pounding in his head softened. The anxious thoughts in his mind seemed to slow down. A feeling of calm washed over him. It was incredible. He looked up at the princess, amazed. "Thank you, Your Highness." She gave him another small, mysterious smile and dismissed him. Minsu walked away from the gardens, holding the calming crystal, his head spinning for a whole new reason. This was not what he had expected at all. He had only been back in his room for a few minutes when another message arrived. This one was not soft or melodic. It was a block of sharp, harsh text. It was a summons to the Gruthan sector of the city, to a place called the Proving Grounds. It was from Prince Torin. Minsu's feeling of calm vanished. The prince was sure to be furious. The Gruthans valued strength and discipline. A drunk human causing a scene was the opposite of that. This meeting would not be in a peaceful garden. He was sure of it. The Proving Grounds were a vast, dusty arena. The air smelled of ozone and crushed rock. Gruthans were everywhere, training, lifting heavy weights, and sparring with powerful-looking energy staffs. The sounds were grunts and the crash of stone on stone. Prince Torin was in the center, practicing with a massive hammer that looked like it could knock down a building. He saw Minsu and stopped. He planted the hammer on the ground and walked over, his heavy steps making the floor vibrate. Minsu felt very, very small. Torin looked down at him, his rocky face impossible to read. "Herald," he grunted. Minsu blinked. "My name is Minsu, Your Highness." "Herald," Torin repeated, as if that was the only title that mattered. "Your declaration was heard? The challenge is accepted." "Challenge?" Minsu's voice squeaked. "For the princess," Torin said, as if it were obvious. "You announced the contest. Now it begins. I will prove my worth." Minsu's mind was screaming. A contest? He had started a contest? I did not mean to... Minsu started to say. Torin cut him off. "A weak herald makes for a weak challenge. You must be strong." You must be worthy of the role you have taken. He gestured to a nearby Grothan who brought over a datapad. Torin shoved it into Minsu's hands. This is a basic strength regimen. You will follow it. Your body is soft. It must become hard. Minsu looked at the screen. It showed exercises with names like boulder lift and mountain stance. It looked terrifying. Also, Torin said, you will need armor. A herald cannot be seen in that. He gestured dismissively at Minsu's diplomatic uniform. Another Grothan handed Minsu a heavy metallic voucher. Go to the armorer. And this, Torin said, handing him a final data chip, is the Song of Grota? Listen to it. It will put fire in your spirit. With that, Prince Torin turned and walked back to his hammer. The conversation clearly over, Minsu stood there, holding a calming crystal from one royal and a workout plan from the other. He walked back to the embassy in a complete daze. He was not being sent home. He was not in trouble. Instead, he was somehow in the middle of something much, much bigger. He went to his room and played the data chip Torin had given him. A sound filled the room, a deep, rhythmic, guttural chanting, mixed with the sound of drums that beat like a giant's heart. It was the opposite of the Silketh crystal. It was not calming. It was stirring. It made him want to move, to fight, to do something. It was powerful and a little frightening. The next few days were the strangest of Minsu's life. He was now the most talked-about person in the diplomatic corps, but no one knew what to say to him. Commander Lee just watched him with a cold, silent fury, and the gifts kept coming, from Liana, a small living plant that changed color to match his mood. When he was confused, it turned a swirling blue. When he was nervous, it flashed a soft yellow. It was beautiful, but it also felt like she was watching him. From Torin, a delivery of Gruthan food rations. They were like dense, flavorless bricks. A note-attached read. Strong body, strong mind. Minsu tried to eat one and nearly broke a tooth. He was trapped. He was not a diplomat anymore. He was a prize. Both royals were trying to win his favor. They believed that the herald who had seen their connection must be convinced to support their side. If he sided with Liana, it would validate her psychic connection. If he sided with Torin, it would prove his strength was superior. He tried to explain the misunderstanding to Commander Lee. They think I'm some kind of love prophet, he said, his voice desperate. Lee's face was like stone. You created this situation, Aide Kim. You will find a way to manage it without causing an interstellar incident. The stability of this alliance now, somehow, rests on your shoulders. Do not drop it. That night, Minsu sat on his bed. In one hand, he held Liana's calming crystal. In the other, he held Torin's workout datapad. The two objects were from different worlds. Just like the two royals. Just like him and this entire mess, he had thought he was going to be fired. Instead, he had become the most important person in a game he did not know how to play. A game where the rules were written in two different languages he barely understood. The love war was on, and Kim Min-soo was the unwitting prize. The strange new life of Kim Min-soo settled into a bizarre routine. His small room in the embassy was now filled with conflicting gifts. The gentle chiming plant from Liana sat on his desk, while Torin's Gruthan training weights sat in a corner like a pile of rocks. He tried to follow Torin's workout plan, but his human body was not made of stone. He was sore all the time. He listened to the Grothan war chants, which made his heart race, and then he would hold Liana's crystal to calm down. He felt like he was being pulled in two different directions. The problem was getting worse, not better. The two royals were not getting closer. Their competition was making things more tense. They were trying to win, and Min-soo was the goalpost. He saw it during a public ceremony. Liana presented Torin with a beautiful hand-woven Silketh tapestry. It was a gift of great cultural importance, showing two moons in harmony. Torin looked at the delicate fabric, grunted a thank you, and then presented his gift to her. It was a massive, polished shield made of Grothan iron. It was strong and practical, but it was also heavy and plain. Liana's guards had to struggle to carry it away. The look on her face was not one of joy. Later, there was a joint military exercise. Human, Silketh, and Gruthan ships were supposed to practice flying in formation. It was a show of unity, but Prince Torin, wanting to show off the power of his warships, ordered his fleet to perform aggressive, high-speed maneuvers. His huge battleship flew too close to the elegant, crystal-based ships of the Silketh, causing their sensitive systems to flicker with alarm. From the observation deck, Minsu watched it happen. He saw Liana's face tighten with worry and anger. He heard Commander Lee curse under her breath. The exercise was meant to build trust. Instead, it almost started a real fight. That was the moment Minsu realized something. He could not just stand in the middle and be a prize. He was making things worse by doing nothing. He was a symbol of their competition. If he wanted to fix this, he had to stop being a symbol. He had to become a person again. He had to use his own skills, his human skills. He got an idea. It was a simple, human idea. He went to Commander Lee. "I want to organize a diplomatic event," he said. Lee looked at him with deep suspicion. "The last event you organized ended with you giving a drunk toast to 2 alien royals?" "This is different," Minsu insisted. "No politics. No ceremonies, just people talking. A picnic." Commander Lee stared at him. "A picnic?" "Yes," Minsu said. "A meal outdoors?" "Very simple. Very human." Lee was silent for a long time. She knew the situation was bad. The normal way of doing things was not working. Maybe a human way was worth a try. "Fine," she said finally. "But if you cause another incident, your career is over, and I will personally throw you out of an airlock." Minsu got to work. He chose a place in a neutral park, a grassy area under the glowing leaves of the alien trees. He did not use fancy diplomats or servers. He got food from the human embassy kitchens. There were no complex alien dishes. There was simple food, bread, cheese, sliced meat, and fruit. He also brought a deck of playing cards and a small music player. He sent the invitations himself. To Princess Liana and Prince Torin, he wrote that it was an informal meeting to discuss cultural exchange. No titles, no uniforms. Just comfortable clothes. He was nervous when the day arrived. He set everything up on a large blanket on the grass. He had no idea if they would even come, but they did. Liana arrived first. She was not in her flowing royal robes. She wore a simple, pale blue dress. She looked less like a princess and more like a young woman. She looked at the blanket on the grass with curiosity. "We are to sit." "On the ground?" she asked. "Yes," Minsu said. "It's part of the experience." Then Torin arrived. He was not in his battle armor. He wore a simple, dark tunic. He looked huge and out of place. He looked at the blanket with even more confusion than Liana. "There are no chairs?" he stated. "No," Minsu said. "You sit on the blanket. It's relaxing." Both royals slowly, awkwardly, sat down on the blanket. They looked at each other, then at the food. The silence was heavy. Minsu took a deep breath. This was it. He picked up the deck of cards. "This is a human game," he said. "It is called cards. This game is called Go Fish." He explained the simple rules. You ask the other person for a card. If they have it, they give it to you. If not, you go fish and take a card from the deck. The goal is to make pairs. Liana and Torin were hesitant at first. The game seemed childish. But Minsu started to play, and slowly they joined in. Liana's sharp mind quickly understood the strategy of remembering which cards had been asked for. Torin enjoyed the directness of it. "Do you have any sevens?" He would growl, and Liana would sometimes smile and hand one over. The stiffness began to melt. They were not a princess and a prince playing a game. They were just 3 people sitting on a blanket. Then Minsu brought out the food. He showed them how to make a simple sandwich with the bread and meat. Torin was suspicious of the soft bread, but he tried it. He ate it in 2 large bites. "Efficient," he grunted, which for him was high praise. Liana ate hers slowly, savoring the simple, honest flavors so different from her refined cuisine. Minsu then brought out the spicy chicken wings. This was his secret weapon. He warned them it was spicy. Torin, of course, took this as a challenge. He ate one whole. For a moment, his stony face showed no expression. Then his eyes went wide. A small puff of smoke seemed to come from his nostrils. "This has fire!" He boomed, but he was reaching for another one. "It is good fire." Liana, watching him, laughed. It was a real, genuine laugh, not a polite royal sound. It was like the chiming of 100 tiny bells. Minsu and Torin both stopped and looked at her. She looked different when she laughed, younger, happier. She carefully tried a tiny piece of the chicken. Her opalescent skin flushed a bright pink. "Oh," she said, fanning her mouth. "It is like a sun on my tongue." But she was smiling. As the sun began to set, making the crystal city glow, Minsu turned on his music player. It was not Silketh melodies or Grothan chants. It was simple, old human pop music. Songs about love and happiness and dancing. "What is this?" Liana asked, her head tilted as she listened to the beat. "It's music for singing along," Minsu said. He knew he could not sing well, but he did not care. He started to sing along, badly and loudly. He was making a fool of himself on purpose. Liana watched him, amazed. In her culture, every note was perfect, every sound had meaning. This was chaotic and joyful. Torin just listened, his head cocked. The simple, strong rhythm appealed to him. Then something wonderful happened. Liana, hesitantly, began to hum along. And Torin, in his low, rumbling voice, started to tap his fist against the ground in time with the beat. They were not competing. They were not trying to impress Minsu or each other. For the first time, they were just there. Together, they were Liana, Torin, and Minsu. 3 people who had just shared a meal, played a silly game, and listened to music. When the picnic ended, and they all stood up to leave, the silence between them was comfortable, not tense. This was a unique experience, Liana said, her eyes warm. The food with fire was acceptable, Torin said, and for him that was a long and friendly speech. They both looked at Minsu. And in that look he saw a change. They were not looking at him as a herald or a prize anymore. They were looking at him as Minsu, the human who had, in his own strange way, brought them together for a few hours of peace. He had not solved everything. The love war was not over. But he had done something important. He had reminded them and himself that underneath the titles and the politics, they were all just people. And for now, that was enough. The picnic changed everything, but it also made things more complicated. The simple, friendly afternoon was like a crack in a wall of ice. Behind that wall, real feelings began to flow. And they were not simple at all. Princess Liana found herself thinking of Prince Torin not as a rival, but as the stubborn, surprisingly honest man who had enjoyed spicy chicken wings. She remembered the low, rumbling sound of his laughter. It was a good sound. And she thought of Minsu, whose simple, chaotic kindness had shown her a new way to be happy. He was not a herald. He was a friend. A warm and clever friend. Prince Torin no longer saw Liana as just a prize to be won. He saw her sharp mind during the card game and her brave curiosity with the food. She was strong in a way he had not understood before. And Minsu was not a weak herald. He was a clever warrior who fought with food and music, and he had won a small battle for peace. Torin respected that. The problem was, both of them were now looking at Minsu in a new way too. And Minsu was looking back at both of them. This created a new, quiet tension. The love war was no longer a straight line between 2 rivals. It was a triangle. When the 3 of them were together at official events, the air felt different. Liana would smile at a comment from Minsu, and Torin would watch, his stony face thoughtful. Torin would ask Minsu about human training methods, and Liana would listen, interested in this new side of the prince. The competition was still there, but it was softer, more confused. The final Alliance Summit was held on the Grothan flagship, a massive, intimidating warship called the Stone Fist. The halls were dark metal, echoing with the heavy footsteps of Grothan crew. It was a place of war, not peace. Minsu was there as part of the human delegation. He felt small and out of place on the huge ship. He could feel the weight of the unspoken feelings between the three of them. He did not know what to do. He liked Liana's grace and intelligence. He liked Torin's raw strength and honesty. The idea of choosing between them felt impossible and also wrong. As the leaders of the three races sat down to sign the formal treaty, the lights on the ship flickered and turned a harsh red. A loud, blaring alarm cut through the air. Battle stations. A Gruthan voice boomed over the speakers. We are under attack. Hostile vessels decloaking. Panic erupted. The summit was a trap. A hostile faction, the Cathar, who wanted the alliance to fail, had found them. Their sleek, predatory ships swarmed the Stone Fist, their weapons firing bright bolts of energy. The ship shook violently. A blast hit somewhere close by, and the ceiling rained down sparks and metal dust. The elegant meeting room became a scene of chaos. Security details rushed to their leaders, pulling them in different directions. In the confusion, a heavy door, warped by an explosion, slammed shut, cutting off a section of the corridor. Minsu, Liana, and Torin were on one side. Their security teams were on the other. They were trapped, alone. The lights in their section flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. The sounds of battle echoed through the metal walls. They were in a dead-end corridor with no weapons and no way out. Liana's calm was gone, replaced by fear. Torin was furious, slamming his fist against the sealed door. But it did not budge. We are sitting targets here, Torin growled. The Cathar will send boarders to capture us. Minsu's heart was pounding. This was not a diplomatic problem. This was a life-or-death situation. He was not a soldier. He was an aide, but he was also the only one who had spent weeks studying the layout of all the Alliance ships, including the Stone Fist. For his aide work, he forced his fear down. He looked around. He saw a maintenance panel on the wall, half hidden in the shadows. Wait, Minsu said, his voice shaky but firm. I have an idea. Torin and Liana both looked at him. In that moment, he was not a junior aide. He was their only hope. This way, Minsu said, pulling at the panel. It was stuck. Prince Torin, your strength, please? Torin did not hesitate. He shoved his thick fingers into the seam of the panel and, with a grunt of effort, ripped it right off the wall. Behind it was a narrow, dark maintenance shaft. It's a tight fit, Minsu said. Looking at Torin's large frame, I will make it fit, Torin said. Lead the way, Herald. Minsu climbed in first. The shaft was dark and full of buzzing wires. Liana followed him, her movements graceful even in the tight space. Torin came last, his broad shoulders scraping against the sides. But he pushed through. Minsu tried to remember the ship's schematics from his studies. He led them through a maze of shafts. Heading away from the battle sounds towards a secondary command station, suddenly they heard voices ahead. Harsh, guttural voices. Cathar boarders. They were in the shaft too, cutting off the path. They were trapped again. Torin pushed forward, ready to fight them with his bare hands. But there were too many. No, Minsu whispered, pulling him back. We can't fight them. He looked at the wires around them. He had another idea. A human idea. Princess Liana, he whispered. Can you use your thoughts? Can you make a loud noise in their minds? A distraction? Liana nodded, her face pale but determined. She closed her eyes and concentrated. A moment later, a scream of pure psychic feedback echoed from the other end of the shaft. The Cathar yelled in surprise and pain, Now! Minsu said, He found a thick power conduit. Prince Torin, break this. It will reroute power and cause a surge. Torin did not ask questions. He grabbed the conduit and crushed it in his powerful hands. Sparks exploded everywhere. The lights in the entire shaft system went out, replaced by dim red emergency strips. An alarm blared from the direction of the Cathar. They had successfully created a diversion in the chaos and the new darkness. Minsu led them down a different, smaller shaft. They crawled until they found a hatch. Minsu opened it carefully. They emerged into a small, unused storage room. They were safe. For now, the three of them stood in the dark room, breathing heavily. The only light came from the red emergency strip under the door. They could hear the faint sounds of the battle still raging, but they were away from the immediate danger. Liana looked at Minsu, her eyes wide with amazement and gratitude. "You saved us," she breathed. Torin put a heavy hand on Minsu's shoulder. The weight was immense, but it was not a threat. It was a gesture of deep respect. "You fight with your mind," Torin said, his voice full of approval. "That is a powerful weapon." In the dim red light, the three of them looked at each other. The princess, the prince, and the human aide. The political games, the love war, the confusion, it was all burned away by the real danger. They had just faced together. They had not survived because of titles or alliances. They had survived because of Torin's strength, because of Liana's psionics, and because of Minsu's quick human thinking. The looks they shared now held no confusion. There was only a clear, powerful understanding. They were a team. They had saved each other. Whatever was between them was no longer a war to be won. It was a bond that had been forged in fire and darkness. They stood in silence, listening to the fading alarms, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The battle was over. The combined forces of the Alliance had fought off the Cathar attack. The Gruthan flagship was damaged but victorious. In the days that followed, repairs began. But the most important repairs were not to the ship. They were to the relationships between the three people at the center of it all. The story of how the three heirs had survived together spread quickly. It was not a story of a prince saving a princess or a human being a helpless victim. It was a story of a growth and strength, a Silketh's mind and a human's cleverness all working together. It was a better story than anyone could have invented. A final meeting was called. The main alliance treaty was ready to be signed. The leadership of all three races gathered in the repaired hall on the Stone Fist. The mood was serious, but also hopeful. They had been tested by fire, and they had not broken. After the official signing, there was a smaller, private meeting. Only the top leaders and the three of them were there, Princess Liana, Prince Torin, and Kim Minsu. The room was quiet. Commander Lee was there, watching Minsu carefully. The Gruthan king, a larger, older version of Torin, sat with his arms crossed. The Silketh Empress, Liana's mother, had a face as serene and unreadable as the moon dot. It was Minsu who spoke first. He was scared, but he knew he had to. The old way had to end. The love war is over, Minsu said, his voice clear in the quiet room. It was based on a mistake. My mistake. He told them everything. About being nervous, about the drink, about his foolish, drunken toast. He explained that he had not seen any psychic thread or issued any challenge. He was just a scared young man who had had too much to drink. When he finished, he waited for the anger. For the kings and queens to be furious at the deception, but Prince Torin spoke next. "It does not matter how it began," he said, his voice a low rumble. "What matters is what it became." He looked at Liana and then at Minsu. "We faced death together. We trusted each other. That is more real than any formal courtship." Princess Liana nodded. "The thread he saw was an accident, but the bond we made in the dark is not. It is real." She smiled, a gentle, sure smile. "Our cultures are different. Our ways are different. But our hearts have found a new way." The leaders looked at the three young people. They saw the truth in their faces. They saw the unshakable bond that had formed between them. The old rules of marriage and courtship did not fit this new situation. Trying to force a choice would only break the very thing that had saved the alliance. Then, the human ambassador, an older man who had been silent until now, spoke. "It seems," he said, a small smile on his face, "that a new kind of diplomacy is required." He presented a new document. It was not a part of the main treaty. It was a separate, unique agreement. They called it the Tripartite Accord. It was a formal, legal, and cultural recognition of the unique bond between Kim Minsu, Princess Liana, and Prince Torin. It was not a human marriage. It was not a Silketh soul bond. It was not a growth and battle pact. It was something new. It was a pact of mutual loyalty, respect, and affection between three individuals. Recognized and protected by their three governments. It meant that Minsu was not a junior aide anymore. He was an equal partner in this new bond. He would have a voice. He would stand with them. They would make decisions together. It was a partnership of three. Liana, Torin, and Minsu read the document. They looked at each other. There were no more doubts. This was the answer. It was a strange, unprecedented, wonderfully human answer. They all signed it. Weeks later, the alliance was officially celebrated. The ceremony was held in a great space station, neutral ground for all. The media from 100 worlds were there. The story of the drunk toast that saved the galaxy had become legend. The three of them walked out onto the main stage together. There was a gasp from the crowd. Princess Liana wore a gown that shimmered with silkef light. Prince Torin stood tall in his formal Grothan armor. And between them, Kim Min-soo wore the uniform of a new office, the Human Liaison for Special Relations. It was a title created just for him. They did not stand as two royals and one human. They stood as three equals. They stood close together, a united front. As the lights flashed, Min-soo looked out at the crowd. He saw the faces of different species, all watching them. He thought about his journey, from a nervous aide to a drunk fool, to a prize in a war, to a friend, to a survivor, and now to this. A partner. He was not a king. He was not a prince. He was just a human. But he had, in his own messy, human way, helped to create something stronger and better than anyone had planned. He had shown that humanity's greatest strength was not in being the strongest or the smartest, but in being able to connect, to adapt, and to find a new way when the old ways failed. He felt Liana's hand gently brush against his, a silent, psychic warmth flowing from her touch. He felt Torin's solid presence at his other side, a rock of unwavering support. A smile spread across Min-soo's face. It was a real, happy, peaceful smile. A simple human's drunk mistake had not started a war. It had forged a new, stronger, and far more interesting kind of peace. And he would not have had it any other way.